Hello, hello. Today I'm going to do a little riff on the nature of shadow work, which is a very important stage when we are interested within the topic, the whole domain of spiritual integration, of mindfulness, of understanding the nature of ourselves better, understanding the various patterns that we have. Shadow work is often described as one of the most challenging initial stages. Um, because it is really a process of representing the parts of ourselves that often linger within the subconscious, that we often repress and ignore, because to bring these aspects, these patterns to our awareness is an uncomfortable and confronting thing. And to be confronted with these sort of patterns that we often repress because they're not socially normative, that they don't cohere with our idealized depiction of ourselves. To come into contact with those patterns, it's a very humbling experience. Really, is a sort of process of really coming into contact with your flaws, your imperfections, all the sort of unresolved traumas that remind you perhaps of how small you feel, maybe. But the 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 process of coming into contact with these sorts of stuff is a necessary process if we are to transcend them, to transcend the patterns. And the whole process is not to try and remove the patterns, it's not to bring it into your awareness and then just throw it away. It's really a process of understanding them, of understanding the root of them, why they're there. It is through understanding that we can achieve a kind of liberation from them, and that over time, the grip of these patterns, the grip of these certain fears, these limiting beliefs, these sort of deep embedded models within yourself, through greater awareness, you can over time develop a kind of a liberation. You can reduce the grip of them to the grip that they hold over your psyche. That only comes with time and the accumulation of attention being brought to them. As I sort of talked about in my sort of previous video about how attention is really a sort of a conscious vehicle for navigating through the various alchemical stages of transforming yourself. In this sort of stage, your attention is very much becoming a vehicle for bringing the unconscious into consciousness, and the shadow aspects of yourself are often some of the deepest, most entrenched aspects, and they are entrenched, they're repressed, because often to engage in a pragmatic and practical way with reality, we can't be bringing up all these unresolved traumas, because they'll just paralyze us and you know bring us into sort of maladaptive ruminative cycles. In order to be a productive worker, working your various jobs, and in order to maintain those sorts of obligations of society, there's a kind of practicality and necessity to repress these sorts of stuff. To repress the feelings of deep dissatisfaction that you may have with your particular job, your particular life circumstance. Because if you were to become fully into contact with that, you would be paralyzed, you would be unable really to continue. And there is definitely a psychological component to shadow work, where you are thinking about all the more cognitive repressed thoughts. But what just came to mind right now is the bodily aspect of shadow work, where often we harbor sort of these deep tension points within our body, these deep knots, these blocks of energy, these very aches and pains and whatnot. And we often harbor that within our bodies, and we become disconnected from our bodies in order to cope with those sorts of traumas. And if we look at our sort of in our modern society, where we are a very sedentary society. We sit down a lot. We also often consume processed, toxic food. Those that that myriad of factors, it creates a lot of tension points within our body that we have to disconnect from, because if we were to consciously represent all the things going on in our bodies, all the disequilibrium that exists because of our poisoned food supply, it would be a very confronting experience. And you only have to look at the the state of the metabolic health of our population to see that so many people are harboring deep traumas within their body, deep traumas that and what happens within the body often has ramifications for your mind. Your mind and body are not really separate; they are thoroughly connected, connected processes. So the sort of trauma that we inflict to the body by the food that we eat, by the things that we do, they manifest within your mind. They manifest as a kind of dissatisfaction, as a sense of low energy, as a sense of depression. So, to work through these bodily traumas, is it's a very important aspect of shadow work. It's not just shadow work is not just the working through of cognitive mental traumas. It's also coming into contact with your bodily traumas and the repressed aspects that linger within your body. And to do those sorts of body practices, the most direct methods are, of course, a kind of a yoga or a form of exercise, a form of doing stuff to bring your mind, bring your attention back into your body so that you're not disconnected in this sort of weird, abstract, heady kind of space, which often in the West we're conditioned out of contacting our bodies. And that's why I I do advocate on my podcast very much the importance of caring for your body, of doing activities to bring yourself into contact with the various processes that are occurring in your body. Because if we don't do that, we leave those sorts of body traumas unresolved. And there's all sorts of different ways to come into contact with your body. Of course, forms of meditation are one way. Forms of yoga are one. Doing various poses to strengthen various muscles, various flexibilities, to bring your attention to how you are posturing your body. Those are very good methods. A method which I've always used is various forms of exercise, of gym, weightlifting. I mean, weightlifting is sometimes people have the perception of it as a kind of an egotistical kind of thing, where you are just trying to get bigger muscles and stuff. But the actual activity of lifting a weight or strengthening your muscles is a very meditative thing, where you are coming into contact with the various systems of your body, the various connections of how your body can lift a weight, and as well, there's something very deeply meditative about doing a particular exercise to the point of close to failure, or even to failure, because you are really coming into deeper contact with the capacities of your body's system. And of course, it is through testing those capacities over and over again that you can strengthen them, that you, with rest and with sufficient sleep, your body, acclimatizes to the stress that you're putting it under. And then it develops through that deeper resilience, deeper strength, so you are able to lift more, that you're able to push your body even further. So that's very much, the body element. You can use a kind of similar analogy of weightlifting to the psychological component of shadow work, where when you are able to make yourself comfortable and at peace, even when thinking about and contemplating provocative and challenging aspects of the psyche, as you do that over and over again, you're able to bring these confronting shadow aspects to your mind, and you're able to sit with it, and maybe for longer than you would have been able to. You know, I mean, the reason we repress it is because it's uncomfortable to be made aware of it. But if we are able to train ourselves to be comfortable, to accept it unconditionally, this shadow aspect of ourselves, over time you develop greater psychological resilience. You develop that ability to sit with discomfort, not just in a physical sense, as with the exercise example, but in a deep psychological sense. And, that is a very deep form of sovereignty that you're building with your mind when you're able to, accept all the aspects of your mind, all the challenging ones, unconditionally. But yeah, I think I'll leave that there as a sort of shorter, kind of snappy video. Of course, there are many different other dimensions to shadow work, which I'll probably talk about more, but I hope this will be an interesting primer. So enjoy the rest of your day.